Hey guys, it's Tom here from Pro Direct Running and welcome back to another instalment of Miles from Home. In this episode, I had the privilege to sit down with Global Product Manager of Adizero Footwear at Adidas Running, Nick Roche. Now, as ever, Nick was super generous with his time and we covered everything from how he got his start in the industry and progressed to his current role, as well as a deep dive into the development cycle of the recent Adizero product and what runners can look forward to in the future. So without further ado, I'll leave you to enjoy this episode of Miles from Home with Nick Roche. Nick, thank you for joining us today. I know you must be a very busy man planning all things Adizero for 2022, so really appreciate you giving up some of your valuable time to speak to us today. So first of all, how are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks. I'm doing well. Snowed a little bit here today in Nuremberg, Germany, where I reside. Otherwise, things are going well today, this week, just back from the holiday break.
Yeah.
So fired up for 2022.
Nice. Feeling refreshed after some time off after a massive year in 2021?
Yep. Made a point to take, I think it ended up being nearly 5 weeks off, 4 weeks off, which is a crazy amount.
Yeah.
Didn't look at emails, didn't look at anything, and reset and refreshed, and so that I could come in super motivated. And I found that something that works best for me and my working style. So, like I said, really fired up for 2022 and to keep building some epic stuff.
Yeah, I guess the same principle applies. You know, when we talk about work and running, you need that balance, right? You can't just, be in a deep training cycle with your running for all year round. You've got to have those periods where you're, having a bit of de-training almost. So yeah, it's refreshing to hear.
Exactly.
You need that break, right? Cool. I guess just for the purpose of everybody watching and listening, we've already been through it off the call, but to set a rough agenda for today, I would love to know a little bit more about yourself and your background and how you ended up in the position that you are right now. And then we can go on a bit more of a deep dive into Adizero product and kind of, follow the ebbs and flow of the conversation that way. So yeah, on that note, Nick, it would be great if you could give us a little bit more detail about your exact role at Adidas and maybe kind of a day in the life, if you like, not what you had for breakfast and so on and so forth, but your daily duties at Adidas as global product manager of Adizero.
Yeah, exactly. So you just said what my role is, which is a perfect little alley-oop to me, Tom. I appreciate that. So the official role, I am the global product manager for footwear within Adidas Running, and then the subset of that, which is a rather wide team, is Adizero Footwear. So all the road racing footwear, all of the road training footwear that sits and has the Adizero name at the start of it, and then I manage all of the track and field footwear from the Prime SP to the Ambition to the Avanti, all the way down to the whole star range of the track and field range, the entry level star range that we build. So that's all the product that I look after. That is my official title within the organization, within LinkedIn. And then the day in the life for me as it relates to work, as I believe anyone listening, anyone in the world, the last 2 years have been totally crazy and shaken up how I can only speak to me, but how most people work. But within my role, what used to be a great deal of every day in the office, like a lot of people, long hours in the office, which is great when you're building shoes and things that you're extremely passionate about. Whereas now I work about 1 to 2 days a week in the office just because of the COVID-19 rules and regulations within Adidas and then within Germany and the state Bavaria that I live in. And then otherwise I'm here at home. So I'm at home today. Starts off the morning, coffee, reading up on the running news, on Twitter, on social media, to be honest, some websites, and then diving right into emails and calls starting right around 8:30 in the morning my time, and having meetings on product creation, on athlete feedback, insights, testing, and then eventually all the way through to kind of go to market. So recent launches, the Takumi Sen 8, and then if you turn the clock back about 7 months ago, the recent launches of the whole Fall 21 line with the Boston 10, Adios 6, Adios Pro 2, and Primex. So it's been a totally crazy last 7-8 months on top of an already crazy epic job that I've had. So I'm extremely thankful And then I would say probably to sum up my role in my day to day and to simplify it for everyone is I manage the end to end process of Adizero footwear. So I come up with the concept brief that then gets handed for the shoe, for an idea of a shoe that gets handed to our design and development counterparts. And we go through about 18, 24 months of building product. And then I manage all the way through that through sell-in periods with accounts, media partners like yourself here, and then also an account, and then into eventually the shoe being on the shelf.
Yeah.
So all of that is I manage the product for.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think a lot of people might be surprised to know how long it takes, like how long these development cycles are for specific products, because we only see it, obviously it's a bit different for myself now, but before, when I was just purely a consumer of running products, it was, yeah, the new shoe would release and it was so brand new to us. But for you as designers and product managers, it's, I think I remember way back there was a video, I think it was from Sweat Elite, that they did with Tin Man, and I know he's left now, but Sydney was wearing what looked to be like a pretty well developed version of what we now know to be the Boston 10, and that was February 2018, 2019 maybe. So yeah, long time ago. So yeah, it's really interesting to know how long these development cycles take. But yeah, in terms of your specific backgrounds, like we jump straight into your day-to-day roles at Adidas as in your current role, but how did you get there, for anyone who might be listening who's inspiring to kind of get their foot in the door within the running scene and within this industry? How did that happen for you?
It's an interesting story, and it's really not probably too indifferent to how a lot of people these days in 2022, just started, but 2021 are finding jobs, finding roles in career development. It started with I'm a runner by trade, ran in high school in the U.S. and then ran at university in the U.S. and then ran a little bit after university. And throughout university, for 2 summers, I had the opportunity to intern within the industry, making track and field spikes or helping make track and field spikes within the industry, which was a mega cool experience and one that really kickstarted something that was a passion for sport into molded that passion for sport into a passion for footwear within the sport. So that passion was always there. And then I was like, oh man, like shoes are epic. Like I was such a shoe nerd and running and training every day and running. Now I've had to adopt kilometers through moving to Germany, moving to Europe, but at this point I was running 110, 120 miles a week. Mm-hmm. So you're going through shoes like nobody's business. And fortunately, at university we're getting them through scholarships and whatnot. But I was getting like really into shoes and figuring out like how you can make it better or how this experience with shoes would be better. And then ran a little bit after school, like I touched on, and then got the opportunity through a friend that I ran with at university. He met someone that was working at Adidas at the Portland office, and ended up having a coffee with him. Just talking about running, talking about what I thought about running shoes, what I thought about Adidas running shoes in particular. And I really had never thought that I would be working at Adidas. And then a week later, I got a call and he asked, "You were super interesting. How about you come and work for me?" Mm. And I was like, "What?" I was living at my parents' house at this point. I hadn't really thought. I was still living the dream of running post-collegiate. Like I was gonna make it.
We should add context. You were, you brush over your running, but you were legit. You were running like high mileage. Your times were decent, if I remember correctly. Like, so yeah, like you say, it's not like you were just jogging a few times a week. You were deep into it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it was a lot. Yeah, I mean, it sounds normal to me because it was just what my everyday was, Tom. It was what a lot of my friends were, a lot of the people I was spending my time with. When you start to run with people and you're running 70 to 80 minutes in the morning and then 35 to 50 minutes in the evening, Monday through Friday, an hour on Saturday, and then 2 hours plus on Sunday, you're spending a lot of time with people.
Yeah.
So all my friends were doing the same thing. So it's just a normal thing for me. But I had a serious conversation with my parents, with my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife. And they were like, Nick, this is a crazy experience, like opportunity. Take it. Like, we're not going to let you not take it. So I got the opportunity, and then I've ended up through the company, ended up managing product that I'm, like I said at the start, mega passionate about. That I wake up every day excited to go to work, make a difference for the sport, for the community, and impact other people's careers. Be that, a jogger a couple times a week, like you said, to someone trying to break a world record, and every single individual in between those two runners.
Yeah, it's inspiring stuff. It's such a cliche, but like your story proves, and that really, like, if you want to get involved in running and you want to work in the industry, it has to just start with that passion for what you do. And it, like I say, it is such a cliche, but you're living proof, and so many others are living proof that that's really all it takes, just complete belief and passion in what you're doing. But obviously, it's great to get such an insight into your background. But I'm sure lots of people listening are going to want to know about shoes.
Yes.
So yeah, we touched on it before, but it was obviously a massive year, 2021 for Adidas in general, but Adizero. On the review of the Adios Pro 2 when it first launched that we put on our YouTube channel, I think we mentioned that things with Adidas had got not stale, but stagnated slightly in comparison to certain other brands when it comes to innovation in pinnacle performance race day offerings. Like, you were very traditional in a good way, like the shoes just worked, but there wasn't really that shoe in the lineup which really blew you away until the Adios Pro, the original, came out. And then obviously the 2 with like the incremental updates you made just blew everything out of the water, and has obviously been proven with numerous records and all the rest of it. So yeah, it would be great to know from your standpoint what that has been like as a whirlwind, I suppose, from taking already very popular shoes and just completely, given them massive design overhauls, to be honest. If we're being honest about it, like, some of the shoes are barely recognizable now compared to what they were before, and that's, I guess, in part down to yourself. So it'd be good to know your thought process behind that.
Yeah, a lot to unpack with that, Tom, to be honest, but it's a great question, and comments from your end. I think what was going through my head through the whole process, through the concept briefing, all the way through until retail intro of let's talk. Let me back it up a little bit here, Tom. The best way to talk about the new age of Adizero is, you have the 2 parts. You have the first one, which was the Adios Pro 1, April of 2020. And then you have, chapter 2, which is June 1st of 2021, which is the overhaul of the whole range, with the Adios Pro 2 coming in as well. So the Adios Pro 1 was just totally like, we need to make something to inspire our athletes and invoke confidence back in our athletes. Like you touched on, the industry was changing. We were making great shoes. Our athletes on the men's side had held the marathon world record for a decade. So we were focused more on making very great, quality shoes, crafted shoes. And it's not to say what we make now isn't that at all, but it's just a different mindset when you're not getting, we were excited with what we were making. And then the industry shifted, that hadn't shifted for a very long time. Into this new age of marathon running, and that's trickled down to the rest of the industry. And we said, oh, dang, all right. So Adios Pro 1 comes out. Athletes run well. Athletes run world records. Perez Jim Churcher 2 times. Kimball Candy world record. And, some of the fastest marathon times on already incredibly fast times with athletes across brands, across the industry. And all of a sudden you start to see, the Adidas Pro and the Adizero line getting on podiums, getting records, and that's exciting. And then when the overhaul came in June 1st, the whole every day, I'm not joking, Tom, every day there was a little bit of like, are we sure we're doing the right thing? Like, not the right thing, but are we doing, best for the product, best for the athlete? Because that's what we seek to do with every single product launch and every revolution is to do the best for the athlete. Like I said, the jogger 2 times a week to someone trying to break the world record, and every athlete in between. And until it finally came out, and until we started seeing records, PBs from people qualifying for Boston, it was a little bit of, you're a little anxious. But when it happened, you feel justified in all of the work. And me moving to the other side of the world, to Germany, I was doing the job out of Portland at 3 a.m, and all those 3 a.m. meetings with my team staying late in Germany, me waking up early, all were worth it. And it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask actually about your not necessarily anxiety, but the apprehension around releasing. Especially, we might as well get into it. I've got the Boston 10, the Boston 10 here. I was contemplating cleaning it before we had this call, but I thought it's actually quite nice that it's pretty beaten up now. But yeah, for me, obviously everyone expects like significant innovation when it comes to top tier race day shoes. So if they look a little bit wacky, they've got medial and lateral cutouts and everything like the Adios Pro 2. It's you don't expect it, but it's you're more accustomed to seeing that kind of wild design elements on a top tier racer. But with a shoe like the Boston, which had been obviously a cult classic, like the Boston 7, I had 3 pairs when I first got into running, and as soon as I got to Boston, it was like the shoe that I did 85 to 90% of my mileage in. It was just, there was something about it. You could do anything and everything in it. So I think we've spoken about it before, I think, on the Boston 10 specifically, but that is probably for me the most dramatic design overhaul of the whole range. How was that for you when you're first seeing like preliminary sketches of the Boston 10 and you're kind of crafting this beast, which is different to anything that anyone's ever seen when it comes to the Boston lineup? Was that pretty nerve-wracking, I suppose, for you and your team?
To be honest, not really, Tom, because I kind of hope that the whole rest of the range being radical, like it is, was going to kind of, people were just going to be like, oh, it's just the Boston part of the Adizero range in 2021, right? Like natural, and that's how I always thought about it. And sure, it was radically different aesthetically. And some people might say it doesn't feel like it and whatnot. I think that's, as with any running shoe, all down to the runner and how they run and what they're running on and everything. There's so many variables that go into that. That opinion that runners have that are all valid. But when we started to craft it, and I've said this in a couple other times that I know we've spoken about it, Tom, was that the Boston from the 1 to the 9 was always the training, like the everyday running shoe version of our marathon shoe. At this point, until the Adidas Pro 1 came out, that was the Adios 1 through 5. And then when we came out with the Adidas Pro, it was like, all right, so now that's our new, our new beacon of a marathon racing shoe. And we've got Lightstrike Pro and we've got rods in it. How do we make the training version of that when we know that the industry that within us, we've gone to thicker midsoles, an obvious, a little bit heavier, but we all know the game we've been spoken about for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the gains of the thicker midsoles and the super foams and everything for a reduction in fatigue for athletes of all capabilities. So the obvious thing and the straightforward thing to us was, why would we not put that in the Boston that someone's supposed to be running, to your thing, 80 to 90% of their running in? So it just seemed like a natural decision to move that in. And if you look at it within a vacuum, it makes sense. But then to your point, if we look at it and zoom out for the cult classic of the Boston, it was a complete overhaul. It is the most radical of all of, because it was the Adios 2, Adios Pro 2, the Primex 1, and then the Adios 6. So the other shoes didn't have the longevity of a franchise for us to be shifting. But Yeah, I think we stand by, I still stand by what we did. It's a great offer. It does what it's supposed to do, which is the everyday running version of the Adios Pro.
Yeah, you just
It's
answered my
exciting.
next
I love it.
question. Yeah, but my next question was really going to be around the purpose of the Boston, because like we said before, a lot of people were doing the majority of their mileage in the Boston. Would you say that even though it's, obviously highly engineered now with dual density midsole, you've got Light Strike EVA and Light Strike Pro, you've got the rods in there, you've got the carbon plate in the heel, like there's a lot of different tech elements to it, whereas before it was just sort of boost that top layer of EVA and like a standard torsion system. Now it's got all of the kind of DNA of the top end racer. Would you still put it in that same bracket as a shoe that you can do your daily training in, you can do steady runs, long runs, like tempo sessions in? It's sort of still a jack of all trades type shoe, and therefore still sticks to that Boston identity, even though it looks very different.
Yeah, short answer, yes. Tom, I would say it's an everyday shoe. For context, I ran in that shoe from the very first sample I received in November of 2019
Yeah.
until the launch of it. And I know I'm running way less than I was, but I ran in it, and that was my go-to shoe, and I love it. A lot of other people loved it when they first put it on, and it's interesting because in a completely valid, what we're touching on is the overhaul of the Boston 10 and how it's radically different. But when you break down what you said on the Boston 9 and the 8 and the 7 was you had a top foam of some kind, and at this point, some form of EVA. It was the Light Strike on the last one on the Boston 9. And then you had a boost midsole beneath that, and then you had a torsion system at the bottom, and then Continental. So you have two dual density midsole, some form of a stiffening element, and an outsole. When you look at the Boston 10, you have dual density midsole, a stiffening element. Sure, you have the rods, and then you've got the heel plate, and then you've got an outsole. And it's kind of like, if you look at it from an ingredient level, sure, they've been turned up to 11, if you will, from the new age stuff that we have at our disposal, but it's still from a recipe level, it's still basically the same. Despite it being radically different, for sure. So I would say it was built from day one with the intent of the everyday running shoe version of the Adios Pro.
Yeah. And just before we move on from the Boston 10, I think for anybody listening who is still maybe a little bit unsure about the Boston 10, I think you put it best when I emailed you about it originally after my first couple runs, and thought, this feels like different. It feels very like different compared to what I'm used to with the Boston, and completely contrasting to what I expected it to feel like, I suppose. But I think your advice to give it time and to let it break in and to just keep running in it was the golden piece of advice, to be honest. Because now, I mean, it's pretty beaten up. We've got 300 plus miles on it, and it's aging like a fine wine. It just gets better every time I run in it. Got back from lunch break run just before this call, actually, and I did it in the Boston. It's an amazing shoe for me, and just a great daily workhorse that you can kind of use for pretty much any type of run. Appreciate your insights on that. If we move on to if we get into the kind of nitty gritty with the Adios Pro 2, obviously the Adios Pro original was quite a big departure from the Adios 5 and that came before it. But with the Adios Pro 2, you've obviously kind of tweaked the midsole quite significantly. You've got the Selemesh upper, which again is slightly different. The implementation of the Continental rubber. I'd be interested to know like how these changes came about for yourself from a design standpoint. Like, how do you take the first iteration of a shoe and then decide what you're going to change and perhaps add or take away from the next version?
Yeah, so when we sought and we started making the Adios Pro 2, we touched on it earlier, is the total timeline of product creation. So we started making the Adios Pro 2 before the Adios Pro 1 had even come out. and that's an industry thing. So you're building something and you're reliant on, the team. I'm literally a world class, I would think the best in the world and best in the industry, team of footwear developers, designers, engineers, concept excellence testing team, and then athletes that we can use at our to test all of our products. So you're relying on all these people to, do what they do best and deliver feedback and insights on changes. So when we had the one, and like I said, if we're being honest, we started the two before the one had released. The main thing was we wanted a reduction in weight, we wanted a little bit more grip, and we didn't need all of the reinforcements in the upper for an athlete. We wanted a little bit more breathable upper. So when we attack these three elements, we'll start with the breathability. The Selemesh 2.0 on the Adidas Pro 2 is obviously visibly significantly more open in the internal reinforcement versus the one. And then on a weight topic, the cutouts in the midsole obviously assist with that along with the upper. And then on the traction, the continental toe off, to just allow and create a little bit more confidence for athletes at toe off in rainy races like London 2020. Vincent Kipchumba getting second in a kick in completely flooded race with what was it, 15 people in the race.
Iconic crazy. Yeah, crazy.
And he loved it. He's still he was like, the shoes are fine, but if you can just add a little bit more that even the athletes look at and they're like, oh, Scott Continental, good to go. Don't even have to think twice about it. So those were what we looked to add, and as you can tell, that's what we ended up going with.
Yeah, you make a good point there that I wouldn't mind touching on about athletes that are still potentially using the original Adios Pro, even up until very recently, Valencia, you're seeing the Solar Yellow Adios Pro on podiums. From without giving away anything that, I don't know, maybe compromising, do you know why some of these athletes are, whether they are preferring the original version, or whether it's just like a personal preference, or why are there some athletes who are still using this first version when they've almost, I'd assume they've almost definitely got access to the second?
Yeah, so I think the best way to answer this one without comparing, because we have facts, we know that the Adidas Pro 1 was a great shoe. We know that the Adidas Pro 2 is a better shoe. However, if I think the best way to answer this, Tom, is that the Adidas Pro 1 was such a game changer for athletes and any consumer that has purchased any racing flat from Adidas Running. It was such a game changer, and we set, our athletes set world records in the shoe. They got it, and they felt so confident in the shoe versus, it's not to say they didn't feel confident in the Adios 4, Adios 5, also, Adios 3 world record shoes. But it was so different, and there was an emotional attachment, and is an emotional attachment to the Adios Pro 1, that it's really hard to try to convince athletes otherwise. We do know that the Adidas Pro 2 is better. We have said that to athletes. A lot of athletes have come around. Sometimes, it's hard to do, to put it super straightforward. But athletes are wearing, for me, a podium in Adios Pro is a podium in Adios Pro.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense, right? If you're doing, like you say, if it was such a game changer and you have that sentimental aspect of it as well, and if you're racing in a big major marathon, this is their jobs. Let's not forget, they need to be wearing what they're most comfortable in and most accustomed to, I suppose. So yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah, I would say a good analogy, or not even an analogy, but just where it's happening elsewhere in sport, is Tony Cruz's boots that he's wearing. That's a much more radical example, but he's wearing boots that are 5 years old, but they're emotional to him. He feels like he can play the best in these, and some of our athletes feel like they can play the best, and they can compete at the highest in this. now, we see evidence of Prez Jepp getting a shoe a week before the Tokyo Olympics, wearing it, winning the Tokyo Olympics in the marathon. So like, all athletes are different, all consumers are different, and I firmly believe and stand by when athletes get the opportunity to test and try and race in the Adidas Pro 2, they're going to get on board. We just haven't gotten to that point with everyone at this state.
Yeah, sure. And moving on to something more radical. Unfortunately, I don't actually have it. I'm sort of playing Pokemon with Adizero at the moment, trying to get them all. But the Primex, it's it's a freak of a shoe. It's an incredible piece of engineering. But I'd be really interested to know from your standpoint, if the IAAF rulings of maximum 40mm stack height were rescinded, do you think that your athletes would automatically gravitate towards the Primex for their marathon racing if it was legal?
That's a hard one, because we obviously released the shoe after the ruling, so we knew that wasn't. We have had athletes, evidence will show, wear it in races and run well. But I would say if the rules didn't exist, it takes a while. It's at a UK 8.5, Tom, it's 50mm stack height versus 39.99 on the Adidas Pro 1 and 2. That's a significant difference. So I think if athletes became accustomed to it, I don't see why they wouldn't. We're talking 30-gram difference. So if athletes are comfortable with the weight increase for the more foam, for double layers of stiffening element, I could see athletes wearing it for sure.
I think you mentioned in previous interviews that your elites are really loving it for training. I mean, I could definitely guess why they like it, for the protective properties and such, but from your standpoint, what was the intended purpose of this shoe? Because some people may brand it as a bit of a concept shoe, but it's more than that, right? It's still highly functional. So what is it for you? What is the purpose of the Primex?
It's everything. So we built it for everyone that doesn't get their shoes checked in races to race in it, to unlock this potential, to unlock this Boston qualifier, to unlock this sub 3 marathon, to unlock this sub 4, sub 230, like whatever. 1 second. Sorry, Tom. I'm going to have to mute and tell my dog to shh real quick. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
To everyone listening, watching.
It's real life, Nick.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, we built it for everyone to unlock their potential. And then through testing, we found, well, through evidence, through everything, we knew that more of the best foam that we have is going to reduce fatigue in muscles. Like, that's super straightforward, right? Like that makes sense. And then we knew that another layer of stiffening elements can increase an improvement on running economy. So it's kind of like, okay, great. Let's make this for the masses to race in it and to work out in it. And then we got some athletes testing in it, and they knew that they can't wear it in races. And we were getting these reports, Tom, of athletes doing these like 40+K long runs and just totally smashing it. And then they're waking up the next day, because we get, a couple days at a time in testing feedback. Like, next day, significantly less fatigue, could go do the run again. Yeah. I'm like, that's not normal. How's that happening? So the intent was a race day shoe for the masses to unlock potential. That's what we've said. That's what I've said from day one. However, an unexpected use case and intent now is long runs. You see a lot of consumers posting on YouTube, on social media, on reviews, that they're like, this is my go-to long run shoe. Once you get used to the higher stack height, cornering, everything, and you're not an extreme supinator or pronator, probably get on with the shoe quite well. And then to your point, if you can find the shoe, you can get on with it quite well, I'm sure.
Yeah. So obviously we've touched on Adios Pro 2, the kind of go-to half marathon racer. And that's personally how I found it to feel best as well. Those kind of longer cruisy tempos, longer reps on the road, that kind of thing, just for maintaining a consistent pace. It's lovely, isn't it, really? Once you get up on that forefoot, you're engaging the rods, like it's just so smooth and feels so efficient. The Primex being potentially a little bit more of a getting used to period with the significantly higher stack height. I think is it 41.5 in the forefoot as well, which
Yep. Yeah, it's 8.5 stack difference. So again, the 41.5 is on the UK 8.5, and then with the 50.
Unbelievable. But if we focus our attention on the most recent Adizero release, then with the Takumi Sen, I was very happy to get my hands on it a couple of weeks ago now, and yeah, it's obviously it's interesting that we're in a day and age where a shoe with 33 mil of stack is now classed as minimal, and again it's similar to the Boston. It's another big departure from, well, visually anyway, from what the Takumi Sen was. But it would be great to know, like, obviously there's a rich heritage with the Takumi as a racing flat, and you know the story of Amori as the designer as well. Like, it would be great to know a little bit more about that and how kind of valuable and important the Takumi range is for yourselves at Adidas and Adizero.
Yeah, and first of all, incredibly important. Every shoe that we make is important, but every shoe serves a purpose, and that's what Fall 21 and then SS22, the season we're currently in, that the Takumi Sen 8 was a part of. We really wanted to seek and create identities and use cases for every single shoe. You see a couple of these use cases through lovely third-party individuals and sites making them for 5K, 10K, paces, whatnot, and plotting the Adizero shoes into it, which, first of all, I have to give a shout out to every single person that's made one of those. It's super interesting, and I love seeing everyone create those. But when we look at the Takumi Sen 8, it has been a shorter track road flat within the range. And when you see it all, like you said, it being 33 millimeters in the heel, being a departure from the usual stuff, it's all gotten kind of, the whole industry in the shoe and the range has gotten kind of bumped up through track spikes being allowed at this point up to 25 millimeters of thickness, and then road race shoes at a top tier level can be 40 millimeters. And we know that 25 millimeters with spikes is a better offer than 25 millimeters with no spikes on the track. So it's kind of had us rethink, how do we build a shoe for the 5K, 10K, build a Takumi Sen with the new age innovations and tech that we have. So about 6 months later, we had the same conversation that I touched on earlier with the Boston 10. We had that again with the Takumi Sen 8. So we know what we want to build. We want to build a 5K, 10K shoe that a lot of athletes, let's just be real, a lot of athletes could take it up to a marathon if they chose, because it is thicker than marathon shoes 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So just, we need to kind of reassess that, or remind ourselves of that. And so it was Light Strike Pro, obvious, first one, energy rods. However, unlike the Adidas Pro and the Primex, we have glass fiber energy rods, similar to what you'll see on the Avanti track spike. It's actually nearly identical rods to what is in the Avanti Tokyo track spike. Both that being a 5K, 10K track spike, this being 5K, 10K road shoe. A lot of similarities are shared there, and how we're trying to generate and amplify the forces created by the athletes.
And I guess
so that was the intent, that was the idea behind what we sought out to do.
Sure. And I guess to touch on the rods in particular, the reason for no carbon, is that just to create a little bit more flex in the shoe, a little bit more, make it a little bit more nimble, perhaps on potentially tight corners that you often get in 5K and 10K races? Was that kind of the general idea?
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to allow, when athletes are moving at a faster pace, we want them to actually generate a little bit and use their own force generation to generate a little bit more force. When you have high midsole, super stiff, you're actually just dampening the force from the ground force, and you're you've created a wheel. So when you talk about the toe off on the Adidas Pro, you've created a wheel basically when you land and you toe off and created this wheel. Whereas with the Takumi Sen and then the Avanti, we actually want to create a lever through to allow the athlete of all capabilities to utilize their plantar fascia, to utilize their foot a little bit more to kind of spur it and awaken the foot. Whereas when you have an Adidas Pro and a Primex, you're not going to bend the shoe, which means you're not, in a positive way, for those use cases, you're not having to kind of utilize your the full extent of your foot outside of making sure you land on the ground, right? So when we can activate and wake the foot up a little bit more and generate more forces through a little bit more flexibility, we found it to be the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think an interesting feature on the Takumi Sen really is you've got what looks to be just Selemesh, the same Selemesh 2.0 that you find on the Adidas Pro 2, but only in the rear portion of the shoe. And then in the front, it's kind of a more traditional, you'll say it better than myself, but just a more traditional mono mesh type material. Why is that? Why isn't it a full Selemesh 2.0 upper, similar to the Adidas Pro 2 and the Primex, obviously?
Yeah, so we have to look at the history of the Takumi Sen when answering this question, Tom, and you touched on it's working with Amore-san and Azuma-san at the Kobe headquarters of the offices for Adidas within craftsmanship and making, and the Takumi Sen has always been built with co-built with this team. So we come up with the idea, the designs, and then we hand it over to them, and they create the patterns and look at it and say this is the best way that we would use it. And this kind of it's like 2/3 and 1/3, or a little bit over a half of Selemesh 2.0, and then more of a classic Adizero net mesh. And the reason for that was we were given proof, and it's 100% true with athletes and everyone that puts it, is it will provide a better fit, better breathability, and will hold the foot, and it fits better to the last for a better fit for the athletes.
Yeah. I think that's the number one thing I personally felt with the Takumi Sen when really lacing it up for the first time, is that despite, like we've touched on many times, it being quite a visual departure from previous Takumi, and obviously the tech specs on paper are quite vastly different, it still feels like vintage Adizero somehow, and I guess that has got a lot to do with the last that it's built on and the overall fit. I mean, yeah, I'm conscious that we've been talking for a long time, and I could probably speak to you all day about various different Adizero related questions.
That's
but
okay.
One thing I would like to touch on, you mentioned a few times about how when you wake up in the morning and you check social media and you see what's going on in the running space, like we all know there's so many accounts these days which are growing massively from just sharing, whether it's leaked images of shoes or, we've started doing it ourselves on social, but the, shoes that are on the podium of major marathons around the world. We're in really interesting times with running where culturally it feels like it's really booming, and more than ever people are interested in what's going into the shoe and the tech about it. You've got independent YouTube reviewers who are making a living, some of them from literally just reviewing running shoes. It's crazy. But from your standpoint, when you have an elite racing shoe like the Takumi Sen, for example, am I right in thinking that obviously your primary focus is to create the best racing shoe for your sponsored elite athletes to wear? How much does the consumer aspect of that come into it? What's kind of the ratio between creating a shoe which is best for your athletes, but also a shoe that consumers like myself are going to enjoy? Because it's an interesting one, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So first thing would be that every single one of our shoes is tested with elite athletes, also tested with what I would label everyday athletes, myself, yourself, people that don't get paid to run for a living. That could be, you go for a run once a week. That could be you're trying to break 2:30 for the marathon. Like I would say a rather, in the grand scheme of things, elite athlete, but they're not sponsored by us. So we test with those athletes, and then we test with our sponsored elite athletes. So through the whole round, we need to make sure it works for both, first off. And then the second one, you talk about this culture shift and this boom of running. We see it's very similar to, the sport of cycling, where consumers that aren't sponsored or aren't professional are willing to go buy, the nicest road racing bike just because, the best cyclist in the world has it. When Sagan was at the peak, and you want to get the same bike as Peter Sagan, people want the same shoe that Perez Jet Church was wearing, the same shoe that Kibiwat Candy ran the half in, because then you feel like, oh dang, like they've broken world record. Like I'm for sure going to qualify for Boston. I'm for sure going to break 3 hours. I'm for sure going to finish that first marathon. So it's 100% through the whole process. We need to make sure it works with our elite athletes, but it's a 50-50. No more than the other. We need to make sure it works with our consumers, and consumers are motivated and inspired by the product.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's cool to hear. I mean, we've touched briefly on the past of Adizero and how much of an iconic franchise it is in running, and obviously in particular for Adidas. The present, we've gone through some of the shoes in the lineup, but when we talk about the future of Adizero, obviously I know that you can't reveal too much about what's coming up, but
sure.
You mentioned that the Adios Pro 2 was already being developed before the Adios Pro 1 had hit the market. Are you in a similar kind of development stage when it comes to Adios Pro 3? Can we expect, similar updates to Primex and shoes like that? Or, yeah, it would just be great to know what the future is looking like. How excited are you about what's coming next for Adizero without giving away too much?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer this, Tom, is simply say, I'm beyond excited. I, as recently as this morning, got updated photos of shoes that we're working on, and it's totally crazy. There's a reason I and the team took 4 weeks off, is so that we could keep bringing the energy every single day. And we're 2 weeks, 3 weeks back in the office, and it's already full steam pedal to the metal. So I'm not going to disclose much of anything, unfortunately, for yourself and the listeners and watchers. But what I will say is that expect more of the same. We're highly motivated. We're not stopping anytime soon. We're listening to the athletes. We're listening to consumers. And we're going to be coming out with a product that we know and we hope that you continue to love.
Yeah, amazing. And just finally, I suppose, every time there's a big Adizero launch, yourself and Sam Handy, I guess, on Instagram, love to share your own kind of prototype colorways of the certain shoes. Have you got a specific place in your house where you're storing like all of the prototypes that haven't hit the market, pre-production versions of Adios Pro, all these like whiteout colorways that you've got, which I also very much want and will never have? Do you have a storage place for it? Because my better half she already hates how many shoes I've got. I can't imagine what it's like for yourself and your poor wife.
Yeah. So it was a prerequisite when finding housing, was having enough space for samples for storage of shoes. So yes, we have storage upstairs with a lot of shoes in it. I have way more running shoes than I have normal shoes. Like significantly, like 10 times the amount. I think I wear like 2 pairs of shoes, Tom, on like an everyday. Like one of them is a pair of Birkenstocks. Like living in Germany, like I have a pair of Boston Birks, and then I have a pair of Sambas. Yeah. But I have like 15 pairs of Boston 10. Yeah. So it's like, tell me where the passion is, right?
Yeah. I suppose you've got more of an excuse than most of us for having, you know, more running shoes than you really need. But yeah, I hope one day we can come and take a look at that collection. We should do an episode like you know, on Complex and places like that where they show off different rappers' running shoe collections. It would be pretty cool to get a look in your running shoe storage unit. But anyway,
the vault.
yeah. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Like an hour has pretty much has absolutely flown by. So I massively appreciate all of your insights. I hope that anyone listening or watching this, if they're already a fan of Adizero, I hope it's been nice just to get, you know, more insight into the design process and to know a little bit more about the thought process behind the shoes and what's coming up in the future. And for those just kind of getting on board with the Adizero hype train now, I'm sure this conversation will have encouraged them to stick on, and you know, get to that final destination, because it sounds pretty exciting. So yeah, thanks Nick, thanks a lot for taking the time.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be speaking to you again fairly soon in the summer when we've got lots of new lovely Adizero product to marvel over.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say, you know, I appreciate it, Tom, for taking the time to talk to me, the opportunity. And then to everyone watching and listening, please send questions, comments to Tom, and Tom can fire them through my way. If you're listening, watching this, and you're like, oh, that reminds me of this, or I really wish they would have spoken about this, send it to Tom. Not to, you know, volunteer Tom for that, but yeah, I feel like that's a good avenue towards myself or anyone on my team is if you have questions, fire them to Tom, or you can fire them myself on social media or the Adidas running handles. But I'm here to listen to the voice of the athlete, be that a world record holder or someone that is just getting into running. So please don't worry or don't be afraid to reach out. But thanks, Tom. Thanks, team. And hopefully it was enjoyable, or will be enjoyable, to everyone listening and watching.
Sure. That's one final thing, actually. I massively appreciate how open you are with sharing stuff. Like, I've seen you go back and forth with people on Twitter about just their general opinions on Adizero and stuff, and it's refreshing to see, you know, someone in your position be so open to these kind of conversations, even if sometimes they may not be, you know, the most positive. You always find a way to get your thought process across. So yeah, it's great to see, and really appreciate you you making the effort to do so.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And yeah, we'll speak next time.
All right, lovely. Cheers, Nick. Speak to you soon.
Yeah. See you guys.
Nice one.